Lewis Hamilton fought his way back to fourth at the Hungarian Grand Prix, only for 1/10 of a kilometer per hour to erase it all. 80.1 in an 80 km per hour pit lane. 5 seconds. One lost position. And suddenly, Charles Leclerc was classified ahead of Hamilton without passing him on track. But that was only the second blow. Hamilton had already been dropped from second to fifth on the grid after a 3-place penalty for obstructing Oscar Piastri in qualifying. Then came the radio message that exposed just how much frustration had been building. Handing out penalties like crazy. Now, Ferrari faces an uncomfortable question. Did the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile simply apply 2 clear rules, or did Hamilton's 4th penalty across 3 consecutive race weekends reveal a system that can punish tiny mistakes with enormous consequences? Because the real tension is not about one lost position. It is about what happens when Hamilton believes the stopwatch no longer decides his weekend. Subscribe to the channel. To understand why this penalty created so much tension around Ferrari and Hamilton, you have to look at how the entire weekend unfolded. Hamilton did not begin the Hungarian Grand Prix from the position he had earned on pure speed. He had qualified second. That should have placed him on the front row, with a clear view of the first corner and a genuine chance to fight near the front from the opening lap. At the Hungaroring, that matters enormously. The circuit is narrow. The corners arrive quickly. And once a driver becomes trapped behind another car, even a faster machine can lose lap after lap without finding a clean way through. Starting second gives a driver freedom. Starting fifth creates traffic. That was Hamilton's first setback. After qualifying, he received a 3-place grid penalty for obstructing Oscar Piastri at turn 1 during the final part of the session. Second became fifth. The lap still existed. The speed still existed. But the reward was gone. And that changed everything Ferrari had to manage on Sunday. From the front row, Hamilton could have focused on the leaders. From fifth, he had to deal with more cars, more disturbed air, and more strategic uncertainty. One extra car ahead can affect tire temperatures. Several cars ahead can alter the entire race. Think of trying to run through a narrow hallway. Your speed does not matter if the path in front of you is blocked. That was the problem Hamilton faced. He had a competitive Ferrari. He had already shown the pace. But now he had to recover what had been taken away before the race even started. And he did. Hamilton moved forward. He climbed from fifth to fourth on the road. That detail is important because it shows the race was not slipping away from him. He was rebuilding it. He had recovered one of the lost positions and placed himself ahead of Charles Leclerc by the time he crossed the line. Then the second penalty arrived. During Hamilton's third pit stop, under the virtual safety car, the pit lane limit was 80 kilometers per hour. Hamilton was recorded at 80.1, 1/10 above the limit. That was enough for a 5-second penalty. And those 5 seconds changed the Ferrari order. Hamilton crossed the line fourth. The official classification placed him fifth. Leclerc moved ahead without making an overtake on track. That is where the internal tension becomes easy to understand, even though the source does not confirm any argument inside Ferrari. The team had 2 drivers separated by an official decision. One result existed on the road. Another appeared in the final classification. And Hamilton had now watched his weekend change twice through stewarding. First, second became fifth. Then fourth became fifth. That sequence carries emotional weight. A driver can accept losing a position in battle. He can see the rival beside him. He can feel where the move was won or lost. But a penalty changes the result from outside the cockpit. The race is finished. The effort has been made. Then the number beside the driver's name changes. That can feel much harder to process, especially when the difference was only 1/10 of a kilometer per hour. Not 1 full kilometer, not half, 1/10. The violation was measurable. The consequence was immediate. And the result inside Ferrari changed completely. That is why Hamilton's radio message mattered so much. Handing out penalties like crazy. It was not an attack on Leclerc. It was not evidence of a conflict with Ferrari. And it was not a claim that the governing body was deliberately targeting him. It was frustration. The reaction of a driver who had watched another strong result change through a penalty. And this was not happening in isolation. The pit lane sanction became Hamilton's 4th penalty across 3 consecutive race weekends. That does not prove the decisions were wrong. It does not prove bias. But it explains why the reaction sounded heavier than one ordinary complaint. For penalties across 3 weekends create a pattern in the driver's mind. One mistake, another ruling, another lost opportunity, another result changed. Eventually, the frustration stops belonging to one incident. It begins carrying the weight of all of them. And that may be the real source of the tension around Hamilton. Not a confirmed dispute inside Ferrari. Not a public breakdown between teammates. The tension comes from the feeling that strong performance is no longer enough to protect the result. Hamilton qualified second. The penalty moved him to fifth. He recovered to fourth. Another penalty returned him to fifth. The race became a circle. Every step forward was followed by another official setback. That is difficult for any driver. For Hamilton, it was even more painful because the Ferrari had shown genuine competitiveness. He had not struggled all weekend. He had not simply inherited a poor result. He had produced speed. He had recovered on track. And then the final classification told a different story. That creates an uncomfortable question inside any team. How should Ferrari judge the weekend? By the official result? Or by what Hamilton actually produced before the penalties changed it? The official result says Leclerc finished fourth and Hamilton finished fifth. The on-track finish says Hamilton crossed the line ahead. Both are true. And when two truths point in different directions, tension grows naturally. That does not mean Ferrari must choose one driver over the other. The source does not confirm any internal disagreement, but it does mean the team has to separate performance from punishment. Hamilton's pace was strong enough for second in qualifying. His recovery was strong enough for fourth on the road. The penalties changed both outcomes. That is not a small detail. It changes how engineers review the weekend. It changes how the driver evaluates his own performance. And it changes how the public compares the two Ferrari drivers. A result can say one thing. The underlying pace can say another. That gap is where frustration lives. And the 5-second penalty made the gap impossible to ignore. Sky Sports Formula One commentator Anthony Davidson questioned the sanction because the excess was only 1/10 of a kilometer per hour. That criticism did not overturn the decision. It did something else. It gave the controversy a clear center. The issue was no longer whether Hamilton had exceeded the limit. He had. The issue was whether the punishment matched the scale of the offense. That is a much harder question, because the pit lane limit exists for safety. Mechanics work close to moving cars. The governing body needs a clear line. Drivers must respect it. But when the recorded excess is microscopic, the punishment can still feel enormous. 1/10, 5 seconds, one position. That contrast is what made the decision so difficult to ignore. And it creates the next problem for Ferrari. Teams do not only react emotionally to penalties. They react technically. They review settings. They examine the limiter. They consider whether the safety margin was too small. They ask whether the car should target a slightly lower speed in future. That sounds sensible, but every extra margin costs time. If Ferrari decides to operate below the official limit to avoid another penalty, Hamilton may lose fractions during future pit stops. Those fractions can affect track position. Track position can affect traffic. Traffic can affect tire life. One small adjustment can spread through the entire race. That is how one penalty from Hungary can continue influencing Ferrari long after the weekend ends. The rule remains 80 kilometers per hour, but the team may no longer feel comfortable operating so close to it. And this is where the tension becomes strategic. Push close to the limit and risk another 5-second penalty. Stay safely below it and surrender time on every stop. There is no free solution. Formula One is built around margins. Teams chase them everywhere. In braking, in tire preparation, in pit stops, in strategy. Then 1/10 becomes the difference between success and punishment. Hamilton's case exposed that reality in the clearest possible way. He was not punished for a dramatic pit lane entry. He was not several kilometers per hour over the limit. He was 1/10 over. The measurement was precise. The sporting consequence was blunt. And that is why the argument is bigger than Hamilton alone. Every driver can imagine the same thing happening. Every team can see how easily a result can be lost. Every engineer can understand the pressure of operating near an absolute limit. But for Ferrari, the issue is immediate. Hamilton lost a position to his own teammate because of it. That changes the emotional shape of the result. Leclerc did nothing wrong. Hamilton was responsible for the speed recorded. But the final order still did not come from a pass on track. It came from the penalty. And teammate comparisons in Formula One are relentless. Fans compare qualifying, race pace, finishing positions, points. Every weekend becomes another judgment. But Hungary created a complicated picture. Hamilton was faster in qualifying before the grid penalty. Hamilton finished ahead on the road before the time penalty. Leclerc finished ahead in the official classification. Which result tells the real story? That depends on what is being measured: performance, execution, or compliance. And that is where Ferrari must be careful. The team cannot ignore penalties. They are part of the result, but also cannot ignore the speed Hamilton showed. If Ferrari focuses only on fifth place, it misses the strength of the performance. If it focuses only on the on-track result, it risks overlooking the mistakes that change the classification. Both sides matter. That balance is difficult. And for Hamilton, it may feel especially difficult after 4 penalties across 3 consecutive weekends. A driver wants to believe that speed will eventually speak louder than everything else. Hungary challenged that belief. He had the speed for second. He had the recovery for fourth. He left with fifth. That is why the radio message sounded so revealing. It was not only about 1/10. It was about control. How much of the weekend still belonged to the driver? How much could be changed after the lap was completed? How much could be lost through one tiny violation? And how many times could that happen before frustration began affecting confidence? Those are the real questions now surrounding Hamilton. Not whether Ferrari has confirmed an internal crisis. It has not. Not whether the governing body has announced another new punishment after the pit lane sanction. The source does not confirm one. The real tension comes from the difference between Hamilton's performance and Hamilton's official result. He showed speed. He recovered. He crossed the line fourth. The record says fifth. That gap is where the next part of the story begins. Because once a driver starts feeling that every result can be rewritten by the smallest margin, the challenge is no longer only driving faster. It is learning how to compete without giving the officials even one opening to change the race again. And this is where the pressure on Ferrari becomes much more complicated. Because avoiding another penalty sounds simple. Do not obstruct another driver. Do not exceed the pit lane speed limit. Leave more margin. But Formula One is built around removing margin. Every team tries to operate as close to the limit as possible because every fraction of a second can decide a position. Brake too early and time disappears. Enter the pit lane too slowly and a rival may emerge ahead. Leave too much space in qualifying and the tires may fall outside their ideal window.